Thanks, Caterina. Hi, my name's Tony Knoll. I'm a local wine merchant and I'm here to discuss all things wine and in particular grape varieties. And today we're going to be discussing the grape variety of Riesling. Riesling can be traced back to early plantings in Germany many hundreds of years ago, but with the Italian connection we can see that the first people to bring the Riesling grape variety into Australia were actually the Sicilians who planted it in the Barossa Valley in South Australia. Now, Riesling can be grown in a number of areas throughout Australia. There's some good plantings in the lower Great Southern area in WA, a number of places in South Australia, the Eden and Clare Valleys. Tasmania, a number of different spots there, and in central Victoria there are quite a few different areas which grow good Riesling. But the area that produces the most famous and the well-known Riesling from Australia is the Clare Valley. And today we're going to be looking at a Clare Valley Riesling from the 2005 vintage from Geoffrey Grosset, who's quite a well-known producer, and this is actually his 25th vintage of Riesling. Now, the first thing we do when we look at Riesling is we'll look at the colour. And we can see with this one, there's a real pale straw colour with some nice green tinges because it's a very young wine, because it's from the current vintage. Now the nose, when we smell the wine, we're looking for an indication of what's to come further on. And with this particular wine, we can smell some very beautiful citrus fruit, some nice lemon, lime characteristics, and also some citrusy sort of acid. On the palate, we get a continuation of those same flavours. Beautiful citrus, lime, richness, great crisp acidity, and very lean, racy sort of acid flavours. It's exactly what we're looking for from young Riesling. It's a very good wine. Now, when you're drinking Riesling, the temperature is not that big an issue. It shouldn't be too cold though. If the wine's chilled too much, it actually masks the fruit. So just slightly chilled out of the refrigerator is actually a good temperature for Riesling. With glassware, it doesn't really matter. Just a generic white wine glass is fine. It doesn't make a lot of difference with Riesling because it's quite a versatile wine. And aging is a bit of a big issue with Riesling. People often ask me how long is it good to age Rieslings. If the Riesling is made from the right area from a good producer and also a good vintage, something like Geoffrey Grosset wines can last up to 15 years if they're cellared in good temperature conditions. But most Rieslings are sort of consumed within 1 to 5 years of being produced. But yeah, the really good Riesling can last a long time. Shiraz is one of the original grape varieties planted in Australia, but its history actually dates back many thousands of years ago to the Northern Rhone region in France. But it was first brought to Australia as far back as 1932. There was a chap by the name of James Bushy, who is often described as the forefather of Australian viticulture. He visited Europe back then and he brought 400 cuttings of vines to Australia, and Shiraz was one of the vines that actually settled here really well and adapted to the local climate, and was very successful straight away from the early plantings. Australia is actually very famous for producing Shiraz, and a lot of people on the world wine scene actually believe that Australia is pretty much up there in terms of some of the best Shiraz produced in the whole world. Now, people often think of Shiraz from the more traditional areas like the McLaren Vale and Coonawarra and Barossa areas, but today I'm actually going to try wine from the Clare Valley, and it's made by a woman called Stephanie Toole. This is the 2002 Mount Horrocks Shiraz from the Clare Valley. And the Clare Valley has a very Mediterranean climate, so quite hot days, cool nights, allows the Shiraz grapes to ripen into beautifully rich wines. Now, on the colour on this wine, we see some very dark red, intense colours. Oh, beautiful nose, very perfumed, some blackberry, spice, great licorice sort of flavours. Oh, magnificent palate. Those rich blackberry aromas and a lot of length and structure and some beautiful creamy spice, fantastic red wine. Now, for glassware with Shiraz, I'd like to use a glass with quite a wide base but tapers slightly towards the top so that it can lift the aromas, so when you can smell the wine you can really get a good indication of what's to come on the palate. Now, when it comes to aging Shiraz wines, they can live for a very long time. One of the more famous Australian wines is a wine called Penfolds Grange Hermitage. Now, that's a Shiraz-based wine that was actually initially made in 1951, a long time ago, and a lot of people have bought that wine and put it in their cellars for a very long time and have been quite well rewarded by what they've seen when they've pulled it out, say 15 or 20 years later. And that wine can consistently live for about 15 to 20 years. As a general rule with Shiraz, I would recommend that probably up to about 10 years is probably a very safe time for cellaring the wines, as most of them see about 10 years they can probably improve quite a bit to the point where they're ready to drink. Now, when serving your Shiraz, it's always best to serve the Shiraz at strictly room temperature, as that's the way that Shiraz will show best. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Salute.